time. So we'll skip kind of from the 18th century all the way, just skip right into the 20th. But that's the way it goes. Okay, so landscape painting, I think, really emerged as an independent genre around the 8th and 9th century in China. And prior to that, Chinese painting had a little stronger concentration on figures. Narrative paintings, such as this one that you're seeing, called Emperor Ming Huang's Journey into Shu, has landscape elements that you can see. Really beautifully painted, almost fantastical landscape elements, such as these mountains. But the action really is pointing towards this journey of, I don't know if we actually see the emperor in this detail, but you see the narrative of this journey that the emperor and his entourage are taking. So earlier pieces, there are landscape elements that are recognizable. Rocks, mountains, water, trees, man-made paths. But landscape painting didn't become an independent genre until later. And so it begs the question of why landscape became so important. Well, we can thank a very famous painter, poet, and musician in his day by the name of Wang Hui. Wang Hui lived in 701 to 761. And there are unfortunately no really firmly attributed paintings of his that have survived. But most of us who study Chinese painting believe him to be essentially the first proponent and champion of the use of ink wash as a technique, a way to convey the spirit of not only the subject, but also the spirit of the painter in landscapes. So with Wang Hui, the primacy of landscape painting became not about reproducing a landscape that you see in front of you, but using the brush in the way that you write, what we call a calligraphic brushstroke. And using the calligraphic brushstroke and the really infinite possibilities of ink, just black ink in all of its different shades, to render nature in the way that's expressive, self-expressive, as well as expressive of nature that you want to convey. So here with Wang Hui, also we come to a term called literati painting. Literati painting in Chinese called wenrenhua literally means painting of the learned person, or painting by a learned person. So we start with Wang Hui to see paintings that really, of landscapes, that really become very, very self-expressive, has become something that is not only about the painter, but also about the subject. And landscape, in particular, sanshui in China, has become, I think, quite important starting from Wang Hui. So why landscape? Why in particular landscape? And I think, there are some scholars who, and I believe, and I agree, that the importance of landscape comes from both Confucian and Taoist philosophy in China. In the Analects of Confucius, there's one saying that, quote, the humane delight in mountains and the wise delight in water. So mountains are seen as substantial and unmoving, which symbolizes calmness. And water, because it's ceaselessly flowing, continuously flowing, it symbolizes movement. So with calmness and movement is believed the whole cosmos is encompassed. So nature became essentially embodied by mountains and water and all its implications to both of the philosophies. Now, this is particularly appealing to the Chinese scholar, the literati that I was talking about, because Chinese society, traditional Chinese society for centuries, was run by scholars. And Chinese scholars, by requirement, were trained as Confucians. They, studied the classics, they studied poetry, they pass civil service examinations so they can become government officials. So by profession and by training, they're Confucian. But a lot of times, in private life and personally and philosophically, they're Taoists. They were, continually, they studied Zhuangzi and Mao Tzu. They were continually urged to follow nature in its path. Commune with nature, to be one with nature and follow the natural order of things. So landscape, with its association just essentially with mountains and water, I think appealed to both sides of a Chinese scholar. Here I just wanted to show you a couple of the really spectacular mountains and water sites in China. So with landscape painting, I think we start to see really great accomplishments in Chinese landscape during the Song Dynasty. And here we are starting to see what we call monumental landscapes from the northern Song. In front of you, these are the same things, same paintings, the solitary temple and the clearing peaks by Li Cheng. The photo on the right, actually, I took myself. I went to see this really amazing exhibition at the American last February or March. And this painting just is completely, it bowls you over with the amount of detail in there. So these monumental northern Song paintings, at least the ones that have survived, and there aren't that many that have survived, gives you a sense of, the composition tends to reflect this sense of empire in Chinese history at that point. You see the central peak here, just dominating the landscape. And, many have interpreted the central, large, very imposing central peak as the ruler or the son of heaven. Now, on the side, it's supported by smaller peaks and ranges. So you see things on the side, the ridge here. And then these supporting peaks and ranges are considered as the ruler's ministers that help, administer the state, administer the nation. So you see in the foreground then, I think I have some details here. So this is the peak. The temple in the title is kind of in mid-distance behind these really beautifully rendered trees. And then the waterfall going down on the left, and then you see in the foreground, very approachably, there's a way that the artist is allowing you to enter the painting here, with the figures about to cross the bridge into these little huts and pavilions where, there are people serving wine, daily life essentially. So all of this altogether gives you a sense not only of the vastness of nature, but also human activity within it. And the way that we look at this painting is that it's very ordered. It's very clear, nature as ordered, clear, and placid, as in under a great ruler, even nature and all of humankind, or all of the subjects within nature, is enjoying a calm, peaceful time. So you see it in this painting. And all the bustling human activity is really fun to see in real life. And all of this is rendered in really meticulous brushwork. Very, very well done, very clear. It's a massive painting. Can't remember it off, but it's 111 centimeters, so it's maybe about 40 inches, quite high. So the same composition you see also to a certain extent in this Fan Kuan Travelers by Streams and Mountains, probably one of the most famous Chinese paintings. And again, you see that dominating huge mountain in the background. And here the transition is really clear. The background with this huge mountain, you see the middle ground is transitioned through this mist. And in the foreground, you see a tiny little group of travelers here on the path going from right to left. So again, you know, the substantial mountain, either as kind of the central stabilizing ruler, or in this case, it's actually, compared to the painting previously, this one almost acts as a wall, because it blocks you from viewing anything in the background, but, you know, also allows you to roam your eyes towards all of the details in the front, you know, the water flowing through here and the passage going down. Now, Fan Kuan, this painting, as I said, is one of the most famous in Chinese painting history, and this brushstroke, we call it a stippling raindrop texture stroke, is something that's imitated again, or learned and imitated and used again and again throughout the following centuries. That's the other thing about Chinese painting, landscape painting. You know, starting from the Song, there are these kind of standard brush strokes that are learned generation after generation after generation by painters, by landscape painters that, you know, continually use them as a visual clue, not only to render the forms that they render, but also to reference the past. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. So this is a National House Museum painting that, you know, if you're ever in Taiwan and they have it on view, go see it. Now, also during the Song, you start to see paintings that are done by these painters that we refer to as eccentrics or eccentrics. Xu Daoming, who's the painter for this landscape, was one of them. And this is also a painting that I saw at the Nazanikins last spring, and I echo one of my colleagues when I said looking at this painting was a religious experience. It's one of those really rare paintings that have no equal. There's nothing that I've seen in my almost 20-year career that looks anywhere like this, similar in style, similar in just rendering. And Xu Daoming, there aren't, again, you know, as with some of these northern Song painters, there aren't a lot of extant paintings by these artists. And he actually reportedly painted in a very meticulous style before, quite similar to the Li Cheng, the first painting that we saw. But he was also believed to be fond of painting while drinking wine. And this is one of those things that you hear a lot of when you start learning about Chinese painting history, that there are these eccentric painters that are inspired by drink. And, you know, this is one of those paintings that supposedly he painted while having imbibed a little. So these are, again, some of the photographs that I took when I saw the painting on view. So you start from the right. With hand strokes, you always start from the right going to the left. And you start with, again, you can approach the landscape, you know, by following these trees, and then there's a path, and going from right to left, you start seeing this fantastic valley coming off of these peaks, and then dry, almost barren trees in the foreground. And his use of wet ink to describe these really fantastical peaks is quite amazing. And then as you go along, you start to see these fishermen from the title that are just, again, dwarfed by the scale of the mountains. And then you see somebody crossing a ridge and a not very high ridge there. And this is the end of the painting. Now,